Welcome to SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business. I'm Lori Hammel. Before we have our guest join us today, I want to tell you that SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA members. This conversation is made possible due to the generosity of our supporters. Over the last year, SAG-AFTRA Foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you're a SAG-AFTRA member and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. You can find more information about this in the description of this video. Thank you so much for your support. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Toni Howard, Tracy Brennan, Sarah Clossey, and Esther Chang.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start out. I want to ask you, who have been your influences? And anyone can start.
I would say one's a man, Freddie Fields. He was a top agent, represented Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, and I was his assistant from 68 to 74. And Sue Mengers was an agent at CMA, which is actually the CM of ICM. And I learned from Sue what to do and sometimes what not to do. So I would say those two people were my influence as far as being an agent.
That's so wonderful. Anyone else want to share?
I would say, it's Tracy jumping in, that my influence is Toni Howard. And not just, part of the reason I wanted to be on this panel is because I wanted to see her face. But yes, I started at ICM as a young agent and kind of learned the ropes from Chris Andrews, who's great, and still we work together and is fantastic. And he taught me, I knew nothing, so he taught me a lot. But then when I first became an agent, my office was fortunate enough to be situated next to Toni's, and I would be in and out of her office all day long, listening to her calls, hearing how she conducted herself, how she negotiated, her work ethic, which, she was, she's always been a top agent, and she, top of her game now and then, and she still would be in the office extremely early. And I remember she would always be there incredibly late at night too, and just her work ethic to me was incredible, considering the success that she had achieved. And also I loved, and I think I kind of adopted, and just the way she treated her clients like family, and she became family with her clients. And she'd always be going on trips with Sam Jackson, and just the way she talked about her clients. If anybody talked poorly of her clients or wasn't treating them correctly, she would, pounce and, have the person, she'd be very angry with the person who said anything disparaging about her clients. And so I really, really shaped and molded myself and tried to be half the agent that she is.
And then they leave you and you're not quite as close to them. You're no longer family.
It's always family in my heart.
Sarah?
I would just say my first influence was a woman named Joan Scott, who ran an agency called Writers and Artists that doesn't exist anymore. But it was from her that I decided that I wanted to be an agent. She first hired me as an agent. I had been an assistant at CIA prior to that, and in the lit department. And then Joan said, I think, you might make a good talent agent. Would you like to come over? And it was obviously game-changing professionally, but just personally as well, because she was a very smart, very mature, very sort of aggressive, and very kind of by the book agent who really loved and believed in all actors of all walks of life, but particularly the journeyman actor, the actor who just was committed to the craft regardless of their level of stardom. And that's my passion too, is just all actors of any nature. And then of course, the pursuit of a star career is amazing for anyone involved, but Joan's focus was really just get behind an actor because I believe in them as a craftsperson. So that was very inspiring to me. And knowing also that she owned an agency, ran an agency, sort of had started an agency before many women had done so, that was inspiring as well. So I would say she was my first and primary sort of mentor in that business. And then she turned that company over to a man named Norman Alajam, who then became sort of a person who was very behind me and backed me up and pushed me in terms of getting promoted and moving forward. And so it's really great and important, I think, to have someone in your corner. And it's really hard to be in an organization when you don't have that person in your corner. And I've been really lucky to have a couple of people in my corner over the years, and those are two of the first.
That's so
I
great.
feel similarly with Sarah, and everybody who's spoken is this idea of, you have an agency that's big and powerful and full of amazing personalities, but then you sort of have your community within, and people who you call on the phone when a client's being really tough or you didn't get the movie you wanted, and so I would say I'm lucky to work with really, really powerful, vibrant women such as these women, within WME, like Elise Shears or Sharon Jackson or Michelle Bowen and Sarah Selfin. They've become sort of, they become a bit of your tribe. It's different, being a woman in this business. And so just having them, the way that they do business, we're all very different, but I learn so much from them every day. And then I'm going to get emotional here and say, weirdly enough, I do have to say, my parents influenced me. Ironically, they hated that I wanted to be an agent and stayed in the agency business. They wanted to be a lawyer, but I go to law school, but yeah, they worked 6 hours, 6 days a week, never took vacation, always had such positive spirits. They made it really, as immigrants here. And so anytime it's impossible and it feels so tough, I'm like, this is nothing compared to what my parents went through. And the only thing that we always did as a family, to entertain ourselves, is go to the movies. So I always think of, especially my mom, when I think about, God, this is so rough. And then it's nothing compared to her. So yeah.
And I'll second what Esther said about having a tribe within. I was thinking the question, I was relating it to sort of the beginnings, the origins of any one of our careers, but who influences you now every day? It's absolutely the tribe of people that you work with, because as we all know, it's incredibly competitive for anyone involved, and having a group of people who you can consult and also have very different styles than you do is incredibly beneficial, as Esther was saying, because you can learn ways that you want to be, ways you can sort of, you can take other people's tactics and sort of share your own. At the same time, you can also commiserate when that's necessary as well.
That made me cry, seriously, what Tracy said about me. And I was heartbroken when she left, and I would never go after a client of yours. But we all, whenever we run into each other, it's just, she's so sweet, no matter who she's with. And it's true, it's very hard. It's hard when you form these relationships and then, they leave to go to other companies. But Tracy's so special, and I've gotten to know Sarah a little just recently, and we just sort of fell for each other. Well, I fell for you.
Ditto.
Especially when you come from my family, Esther, what you were saying, not in the business at all. I had no clue about Hollywood whatsoever. And my dad wanted me to be an FBI agent because he was a captain of the bomb squad. So they were also not too happy when I went into Hollywood. They thought it was very strange. And so when you can't call your family, and you can call and talk about work ethic and problems and things, but they don't really understand. To have Toni always to be able to go and ask questions and not be judged, and have a safe space to discuss things is invaluable. Incredibly.
Call me anytime.
I will.
Oh, I love it. It's so nice to hear the fabric of, what I think oftentimes for actors, there's a sense of a divide with who they are, the team that they're on, the lane that they're in, and then representation. So it's just really nice to hear, because in the same way that actors have to surround themselves with supportive people, hearing on the agent side as well, making sure that you are getting what you need, because as it's been mentioned, it's just such a competitive field. What do you think makes a great actor-agent relationship? What have you found over the years?
I definitely thought about that, because that was on one of your sort of preliminary questions. And I think from my vantage point, it's communication first and foremost. Having an open dialogue, being able to sort of be forthright, direct, clear, honest, also helpful. I think that also an actor's willingness to kind of be vulnerable and also sort of share their aspirations is helpful. It's also helpful when they're willing and open to listening to the facts and knowing and letting them come to understand that you are on their team. You cannot control the outcome of any given situation. You can influence it, and that hopefully you guys can work together as a team to guide that outcome. But it's really it's a team effort. It's not a single agent's job or the actor's job. You've got to work together. So speaking together and being clear about what it is this actor wants and letting them trust you and you them to communicate and push things forward is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had an incident with a client who was always complaining, and I still represent him. And I was saying, it was like, what, I didn't get this or I didn't get that. I said, look, when you don't get something, I don't think like, oh, I'm not going to represent you anymore. So you can't say that in reverse. It's our job to get you in the room, but it's your job to get the part. So sometimes, and I was a casting director, so I know the other side very well for 7 years. But sometimes, agents believe in you. We wouldn't represent you if we didn't believe in you. We want you to get the job. We want you to get the job almost more than you want to get the job. And you should try really hard to not judge your agents all the time, because the more you feel a client trusts you, the better you are, I think, as an agent.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I also don't think I'm the best agent for every single person. There's certain people I meet, and even though I might love their talent, I don't know if we're going to mesh as well. And I want to work with people that I feel like I can, going to Sarah's point, communicate with. And oftentimes we're giving probably more, you didn't get the job, then you got the job, or we're having to deal with problems or calling us from sets when things aren't going well sometimes, etc. And I just really appreciate when I can tell the truth. I'm not good at not telling the truth. And obviously I'm going to say it with love and kindness as much as I can, but sometimes you have to be incredibly direct. And it's never to hurt somebody's feelings or quash their spirit, but it's only to help them. Also, if I were an artist, I would not, any kind of person, I would not want to be lied to. I want to be like, that was a great job if it didn't go that well or the tape wasn't good, because then how are they going to grow and get better? So I really appreciate when an artist creates that safe space where we can actually just have a real heart to heart and speak openly and honestly. And also, if they're having some sort of situation with me where they feel like I could be doing something better, I'm also not a mind reader. So if I can communicate in a better way, if they prefer mornings, not nighttime, if they like text, they don't, whatever, all the little tweaks, it's a relationship. So if they can communicate to me in a respectful way too, as much as I respect them, you have to have a very dynamic relationship and really speak honestly and openly with one another to be productive. If you're pussyfooting around, if they're pussyfooting around with me and I'm pussyfooting around with them, it's not going to be constructive.
When you must leave an agency, what is the best way to let them know? The classiest. Is there a wrong way to disengage with an agent?
Well, I love that question. Thank you for asking. It's interesting. I will say don't email it and don't text it. So if you would like to leave your agent, my suggestion is call them and have an open dialogue about it and explain why. And I also think if you really are actively thinking you want to leave your agent, the best thing to do from my perspective, and I'll be interested to hear what my colleagues on this panel think, and that is give us a chance to fix it. If you have a real problem, then let's know what the problem is. Help us, give us a moment to rally another team. Let us also know that we are your agent, but you're represented not just by an individual, you're represented by the agency. So if you're having an issue, for example, with me, and you do not think we mesh, as Tracy was referring to earlier, maybe we don't. And maybe there's someone at this agency who you would mesh better with. So that kind of falls under the same banner of let us try and fix it. And if in due time, it doesn't feel like it's working, thank you for giving us a chance to change it. And we wish you the best of luck.
Mm-hmm. Any other advice?
Well, she's right. Not, don't email. I hate getting an email. Mm-hmm. And talk it through, and I would rather somebody leave me and then go to another agent at the place, at ICM, than to leave. Usually you have some instinct if somebody's unhappy. And when sometimes you're just flabbergasted. You had no idea that this person was unhappy. But just what Sarah said, just talk it through.
How do you stay current with the trends, things that are happening now within the industry? For instance, things like how streaming has changed the payout for actors, just how the whole industry keeps morphing. How do you keep up with all of that? And how is that for you?
I think we're also lucky because we work at agencies that just have tons of experience in all of it, where, someone's like Emma Stone's path to this sequel on Cruella, I can learn from. And I learn obviously from you guys too, what you guys are going through as well, and different examples. So it is absolutely a roller coaster ride. It's changing all the time. And, when you talk about different distributors, some of them didn't even exist 2 years ago. So, you're honest with your clients as well about that. And there's no crystal ball, but I think everybody probably feels the same. It's if the content is amazing and the director's amazing and you just feel like this instinct about it, you just go with it and make the best of it within that streamer or that distributor that exists there. So, but yeah, just a lot of research vis-a-vis experiences and mistakes and learning from mistakes and just preserving an artist's basic needs, and passions about that project.
And this seems like a great time to have a wonderful team where you are working, and also to have friendships people that you can reach out to in the business to talk about things, because they are changing. It's so volatile right now.
It's funny, your question. My first instinct when I read your question earlier was I don't, and obviously that's not true. But it's very difficult because, as Esther said, the information is constantly changing, and you could literally be a student of the movement that is happening in the entertainment business full time and not read any scripts, talk to your clients, and sort of do the actual job of getting someone hired that is what you're hired to do. So the somewhat similarly simplistic answer would be I read a lot of Deadline, because there is good information that comes through about what is current. That's what they're doing, is studying the business. And then everyone on this call is lucky enough, I think, to be at, and Esther made reference to it too, larger agencies. But there's a lot of information that flows throughout the agency. There are a lot of meetings that are had. There are a lot of speeches that are done. There's a lot of presentations made to keep us current. And so you have to be very attuned to what those are, because it is so volatile and so much in flux every minute of every day.
Yeah, we have a lot of in-house business affairs meetings, and where they present and they go through case studies and they explain to us of, how this paid out or that could have paid out, or these are the questions we should be asking. This is what to look out for, et cetera. Also, we do work with attorneys. Oftentimes, a lot of our clients have attorneys who we are able to use their knowledge as well. And then et cetera. But yeah, it is a lot of time and energy just because things are changing so rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll say though about this time, which it's like there's a lot of doom and gloom, and I think I say this to myself, maybe I'm just, making myself feel better, but there's also this feeling of this freedom of nobody can tell me that never happens, or that's not part of our precedent. It's like a very new, groundbreaking time. So I think you can never look that stupid asking for a ton of money or less years or something, or, no, we're not going to do the sequel deal or on the movie. Because anything is possible right now, I do have to say. People can say no, but you can absolutely sort of try to architect your own, way of doing it, and then just see if they are open to that. And it just depends on how much they want it, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of freeing at this moment.
Yeah, I remember to your point, Esther, before it was always, if you were doing network television, it had to be 22 episodes, it had to be 20, and then I'm sure you all have other examples. One that came to mind for me was Viola Davis when she did her show, and it was 15 episodes, and that was kind of groundbreaking. I do have to say another thing that I think has been incredibly helpful, and was the labor law that passed that basically said that there's a no quote deals. And I think that women and people of color were way behind on getting paid. And so now if I represent somebody like that and they ask their quote, we don't have to give the quote. We're not actually allowed to give the quotes unless we have permission from the client. And that allows us to just set the price that we think they deserve and go for the price that they deserve. And we don't have to disclose that maybe their quote was only here and we want here. And I do have to say, I've seen that be a major game changer and have been able to really affect change for people, driving their prices up and getting much better deals for them. And I'm really thrilled that law passed.
Yeah, I'm too. And I
But
really,
you know what, Tracy? I give quotes. I go, well, here's a quote.
Sometimes I do. If it's helpful, I give the quote.
Yeah,
If it's not helpful, I can hide
ask-
behind the fact that we're not allowed to give quotes. So
yeah.
but I think the good news is the quote is ultimately irrelevant. It's a good divining rod. It's a good sort of, ballast, but it's not the be all end all of anything. And I think we're the great place, and that was what Esther referred to too, is it's the Wild West. And that's an exciting place to be. Anything is possible. There really are no rules because the rules change daily. And that applies to getting jobs. It also applies to making deals for the jobs you get, and also just the way you do your work day to day.
Well, there's a real power in the word of no. No, we're not doing this.
Tony's very familiar with that word.
It seems to have worked. That's fantastic. I have a question for actors. How do you recommend actors get in front of reps during this time, this crazy time that we're in?
I read that too. And I would say, I kind of feel like, the good news is because we're all in this crazy time, and even before we were in this crazy time, what I'm about to say was possible. You can make your own work in a time where you used to not be able to do that so much. It was more, I need an agent to get a job. I can't get a job without an agent. And there was that catch-22. So I can't get an agent without a job, and I can't get a job without an agent. But that's not really the case anymore. And I think that I always was envious of, on behalf of actors, of writers, because they could sit in a room and write, and then they can come up with a product and they can present it. And an actor at that time, earlier in my life as an agent, you couldn't really sit in a room by yourself and act. But in a weird way, you actually can now, because there are so many platforms where you can make your own content. Not only can you make your own content, most of the people who are kind of rising quickly on the scene have made their own content and got there overnight. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is an excellent example of said person. And people's careers literally changed within a 12-month period, where they go from being wholly unknown to being major stars and Golden Globe winners because they made something relevant, because they made something interesting. And I don't want to be saying that therefore actors need to do all their own work and agents can just sort of, put up their feet. But I am saying that actors have more power to take work into their own hands. And in making your own work, you can get it out there. It will get seen in COVID or post-COVID, and it was seen pre-COVID. And so it's a very good time now for you to create something.
And self-generate.
Yep.
Lovely. Thank you. I have a question from the chat. What is the number one character trait that separates your very successful clients from successful clients? So I guess very successful to successful. What do you see in people that you represent that you find that there's maybe is there sort of a pattern? Is there something that you see continually in people that are very successful?
I would say drive.
Wanting it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting it. When I was a casting director, and sometimes we had to cast, one-line parts, and, people would come in and go, oh, this is such a nothing thing. And no matter what, they didn't want to get that part. They would come in with the attitude that they weren't going to get it, and they didn't get it. So whether you're reading for a one line or a lead in a movie, you have to put all your energy, do everything you can to get that part. Because if it's not this, they'll remember you from another time. But sometimes people aren't prepared as actors, and I think that's a big part. And I hope I'm answering the question you asked, but
I also think people have the one pattern I notice is that people have a self-belief, whether they've done zero or they're, Academy Award winners. They're fine to turn down parts. They're fine to say no to things. they know what they want. They know their goals, and they know they're going to succeed. And they believe, and they make everybody else believe. So I don't know. I noticed that with a lot of clients, whether they've done nothing or whatever, and it can be a humble belief, but they do have a deep belief within themselves. And then the other thing is, at first you're just trying to get a job, right? And then you get the job, and then you get another job, and then all of a sudden all these the merry-go-rounds going. It takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work and sacrifice from your personal life to really be a star. And you're getting up early in the morning, you're going to work, then you're doing press interviews from your trailer, and you've got to get on a plane and fly across the world, and there's no time off. It's not everybody's built for that. It's one thing to be super talented. It's another sort of extra layer for somebody who can do all that and have the stamina and energy and desire and is able to do all of that. It's really a lot of, somebody's asking a lot of somebody to do all of that. And it does require sometimes some, I'm like, I just have to type this up in a schedule. I don't actually have to get on the planes and fly around and be charming. And I can do my job from my desk, and I don't have to look good. They have to get on the red carpets. They have to, all of that. It's a lot. It's people don't, at first you're just trying to get the job, but when you start to add up what goes into it, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, I would say, and it's starting as what Tracy said, and it starts with an irrational belief in yourself, a belief in yourself that's so huge that no one other than you believes from the beginning, and you have to maintain that, I think, for the course of your career. Then it's drive, sort of similar to what Toni was saying, work ethic. You have to be driven, you have to want it. And for sure, for me, that's what separates the good actors from the great actors, because the great actors are driven, and what that means is that they do the work. And they do the work to get the job, meaning they read the scripts, they show up when they need to. They, put their ego aside and read if they need to, if they are not used to reading. They do what it takes to work. And then, to Tracy's point, when they have the job, there's no end to what they do to support it. And I think that's, in my experience, what makes the star. And it's not just showing up and giving the excellent performance. It's doing the press. It's doing all the press. And it goes from doing sort of significant press to shaking hands at a premiere line. It's building a fan base. It's being willing to connect to the people who are invested in you, who becomes your audience in the press as well, and letting them build you up too. So it is a ton of work, and it's a willingness to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the professionalism. So because a lot of people, they keep working with the same director over and over, everybody loves them, they have so much goodwill, and it's just because of their kindness and also their just true professionalism.
I agree with that. I think the best careers you see actors and directors work again and again, because it's a happy thing. It's Martin Scorsese and Leo DiCaprio. It's like there's a respect there. And then I do have to say, I've heard it a million times, people want to work with people that are respectful, kind, show up on time, remember the studio head's name, thank people. I think that is, more and more, even more so now. Back in the days, I think it was okay to be a bad boy or, just be like a maniac. But I think more than ever, I think there's a feeling of, I just want to work with people I love to work with and collaborate, and we'll get bigger and bigger. And then I'll say, as an agent and as an actor, I think endless curiosity. I think the actors that do the best, I think, are people that just watch movies on their own, are curious about who won Sundance, are watching shows, meeting with writers, curious. I think obviously with agents, you have to be that way, but those are the actors that I think, stay the course and stay there the long run.
I think also it's actors who do two things in my experience. One, know what they're good at, know who they are, know kind of what their lane is, and know what works for them, and know that well, and be able to do that incredibly well. And simultaneously be curious enough to challenge yourself and to make smart choices that take you a little bit out of your lane, because it's those smart choices that end up letting a career evolve over time. And it's easy, I think, once you become a certain level star to just stay in that lane. And for some of those stars, it works. But majority of actors who are true actors, you're always going to want to challenge yourself. So it's about being smart about material and being willing to take risks.
Also, actors that are willing to invest in their career. I feel like probably the things that have paid the least are the things that ultimately, with great filmmakers, were the things that were probably the most beneficial ultimately to actors, a lot of artists' careers, and learning to say no, even though sometimes the money can be enticing if the quality's not there. I think obviously that's incredibly important.
Speaking of looking at content that's out there, are there things right now that are really catching your attention right now that you're thinking, this is something that's leading into something that's new? Wow. Are there things that you are inspired by right now?
I mean, I'm going to go back to a movie that was not a recent movie, but Moonlight to me sort of changed the narrative about how how are stories told. And sort of as we look to kind of the wave of the future, I'm more and more interested in nonlinear storytelling, which I think can be equally compelling as linear storytelling. And the more of that I see, the happier I am.
I think the other thing I love about the business right now is like seeing things that never would have become zeitgeist here. Like I just watched Coda. I thought that was so beautiful, by the way, and a movie, sort of where you don't have sound, some of it, and you don't have any stars, but also just, I think shows and movies that are not in the English language, it's really fun to hear like high school friends being like, I'm watching this show on Netflix and it's not even, in the English language, and Casa de Papel or whatever, I'm just, that I think is a real groundbreaking time for us. An agent emailed about a Korean show that he's watching, and should we sign the writer of it? Like that never would have happened 10 years ago. It was a very English language focused white kind of thing.
I love 000, which very few, kind of in that vein. It was sort of in Spanish and English, which I don't think enough people saw. And there's a great show called El Candidato, which was on Amazon, and it was all Latin cast. I really didn't know any of the actors before, and I thought that was also just an incredible show. And it was in Spanish, to your point, and it was just as much fun to watch as anything else I would watch.
No, I'll just finish with my favorite movie of the year for sure was Nomadland. And for me, it speaks also to that nonlinear storytelling in that it combined, scripted and documentary, and it's such a seamless, powerful way. And I just was so moved by the real life characters. And then of course, Fran McDormand sort of, dovetailed so beautifully in with them. And I thought that was just profoundly interesting and compelling and emotional.
I have a question that came up around how are agencies working to increase inclusion, ability, race, gender, since we're sort of on that topic right now.
I think, we've tried a ton of different, we've had a lot of ideas. We raised our minimum wage, which I think a lot of my colleagues here did as well, because that is a barrier to entry for sure. Yeah. When I started at William Morris Agency, a lot of my colleagues, like assistants, were living with their families and, had gone to the same private schools and had gotten in because they know everybody, and they didn't have to worry about lunch, like how to pay for lunch, or they didn't have to worry about their, rent, and so you see like why it turns out that agents and senior people and leaders end up being like very much of the same club. So I think that was kind of like a basic window into trying to, change the faces of the company, and push leadership, and consider not just the typical. By the way, I there's a lot of great white male agents who I love and are amazing humans and do a ton for the community. So, but yes, I think we just have to have a lot more representation when it comes to people that are not the typical agent look. So we've tried that. I know that, for us, we've also put a lot of sort of thoughts in place about like, we have kind of like a group of assistants and agents who look at scripts and sort of define like, this doesn't feel, there's something off about this, in terms of like the perspective of it. It's offensive. There's not like a watchdog group exactly, but things that I think we would never have thought of before, and are we part of the problem if we are, sort of pushing this narrative out there? So things like that, we're absolutely trying to work on it. It's not going to change in a day, but yeah, I think we're all really looking at ourselves and realizing we have a lot of problems and we have to change.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone outside of the talent agencies know how much work so many of the talent agencies have done in this incredibly pivotal and important time. And I'm just really proud of the work the UTA specifically has done. And I know all of the agencies represented here have done. I mean, we've had seminar after seminar, lesson after lesson, and should have, and I'm in the middle of a leadership inclusion training process now that happened yesterday, will happen again tomorrow, because what we've all acknowledged, which Esther articulated so well, is It's an ongoing problem. It's an ongoing issue. It's ongoing learning. And we all have to be repositioned and recentered and realigned and educated and acknowledge that we don't know enough and we haven't done enough. And it's time to stop and do more and understand more and listen more. And it's been really powerful. There was a long period of time where we did very little other than get educated on these issues because there's nothing more important, particularly now.
Thank you.
I mean, everything they said, you said it so beautifully. I don't know that I could encapsulate it in a better way, but yes, the same thing we've been doing internally, and it's something that's so important. And, Esther, exactly what you're saying. I mean, I remember the same thing. I think we started around the same time, and, I didn't come from a Hollywood family. I didn't know anybody. And, I looked around and I felt so out of place. My mom's Mexican, my dad's Irish. I never saw anybody that looked like me on screen growing up. And when I got to the agency back in the day, that was just the norm, and people had fancy cars and, they came from families that could subsidize, their entry into this process. And so I think that, recruiting and making people aware and starting really early, and the trainee program and all of our summer internship programs, and educating people that there's even a career possible in this space, and reaching out to different communities, the very foundation of this is so important.
I have a question. What are
Hey,
you
one other thing. The other thing that I think we all do, and Toni's done this, with Sam Jackson from the beginning, is if you just make people, persons of color, LGBTQ people, make them a lot of money and just make them big stars. I also think that also helps a lot, because then you see the studio say, oh my God, maybe I don't have to have that white guy as the lead of this action movie. Maybe I can actually do that because that person actually succeeded in that other studio and made a ton of money. So at a base level, I think the idea of signing people who are really talented and giving an extra sort of push to make money and make real wealth, like what Ryan Murphy does, honestly, producing for other voices as well. I think that's what people listen to, as it's all about the money and it's all about making box office. And so doing that, I think, is very important.
Toni, you must have experienced that early with Sam Jackson, right? I mean, I feel like.
Yeah, I've represented Sam for over 25 years. And at the beginning, he was only competitive with Lawrence Fishburne or Wesley Snipes. And, and then after several years, it was Sam being competitive with Harrison Ford. So it took just, maybe 3 or 4 years, and other agents that were trying to sign Sam early on would send, him you should be making what Wesley Snipes making, or, doing all that. And I never saw, I always just saw Sam as a certain actor, and, it didn't matter, when people say, I don't see color, and, then people go, well, that's bullshit. We want you to see color. So, but I do think in Sam's career, and he loves to, go from one thing to the next. He loves, Sam has never been in one movie that he hasn't liked himself in. But, it's good to just not see them as, because Sam's first movie was The Black Guy. That's what his part was called, The Black Guy.
My God.
So, yeah, it's nice to see what's happened, with
I think
Sam.
that's something that all the agencies are working together, and in collaboration with casting directors, so that when we get sort of breakdowns go out, they don't say, described as white, 30-year-old, blah, 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 right? It should just be open to great actors. It doesn't matter the color. And so I think, there's so many, we're working with law firms too, with all kinds of different things, changing inclusion writers, et cetera. But there is a lot of change happening. It's obviously very late in the game, but it is happening.
And I think that Esther's point is huge, and it kind of goes back to one of the earlier questions about what makes a good client-agent relationship. And it's an understanding of where your place is in the business. And because the business is a business, it's not just for the beautiful art form that it also is. And so you've got to build actors who are not traditional actors up into being people who have a business presence and an understanding of where your presence is in the business. And then as to the diversity issue, that's key. That's everything, because that's how you're going to get people in major roles, is by making them of value to agencies. To networks, to studios, et cetera. And
I saw a question that popped up about what about diversity with accents? I feel like nowadays that doesn't matter either, that it's much more acceptable when you're watching a film and it not, they don't have to be like the girl next door or the guy next door. They can be from anywhere. And that makes the movie more interesting and textured and layered. And I represent Demian Bashir, who's nominated for an Oscar for A Better Life. And when we first started working together to now, it's like, I feel like things have, dramatically changed. And he definitely has an accent, and he can still show up in a movie and be a great actor, but do his natural accent. And people aren't like, oh, but he doesn't fit in Ohio,
Also, we're getting a lot of questions about ageism and coming back into the industry after a break. Does someone want to address that?
I don't know that it's so much ageism as it is just staying present. It's hard to leave and come back. It's hard for an agent to leave one's business and come back because it's all contingent on your building. And I think for careers as well, it's hard to leave and come back. But so I don't even know that if it's age as much as it is a stop in a career is a step backwards, unfortunately. But it does not mean forever. And I think ageism and a gap in a career due to any number of circumstances that pulled you out can be countered by good agenting. But it does take time, and ageism is a fact. It's just a fact, and hopefully that will change too. And I think that if you look around, there are more and more stories being told about older people because their stories are incredibly interesting. And I think the more we as agents and can encourage storytellers to tell those stories, the less ageism will be an issue.
And also,
but what's nice? You look at Jean Smart. She's 70. I don't represent her, but she's 70, and now she's getting hot. I mean, she's always been a consistent, wonderful actress, but now it's just, she's got this new thing. Oh, we want Jean Smart. We want somebody like, and that's not, I'm happy for her. She's 70.
Yeah. And everyone's one, and then that's a perfect example of every actor is one role away from that. I mean, Jean Smart with Hacks, I would say Bryan Cranston with Breaking Bad. There are a number, many versions of those actors who have worked kind of well for quite some time and get that part at that age, and then their life changes regardless of what period of their career they're in.
And just adding in too, because we've had some questions about diversity with disability, adding that into the mix. Does anyone want to address that?
Well, I think now, they're saying if they have somebody, a part that has disability, they won't hire anybody that doesn't have a disability. So that's helping just a little bit, I know years ago, it's actually a funny story. When I cast Coming Home and I went to SAG and I said, I need a list of actors that have a disability. And they sent me a list, and they said, well, we think English actors have a disability. I went, no. I mean, they don't have a limb. And, when we did Coming Home, we hired a lot of, I think Oklahoma is a wonderful example of the actress who has the lead in that, who did it from a wheelchair. And I think she won the Tony. That was fantastic. But there's no question it's harder.
I think it's also about fostering programs a la Sundance that are championing writers and filmmakers from different backgrounds and different life experiences, et cetera, because we need those roles to be created and to tell different stories and have different lenses into our world and to open that up. And when those kinds of projects are highlighted and championed, then that creates more roles and opportunities for people.
I just feel like more and more you look, and I think that disability is just, it's you see it in advertising more and more, you see it in, and in storytelling more and more. And I think that there's an increasing awareness, as there should have been forever, that there are as many people with any disabilities as there are people without disabilities. We all have some disability. So the more storytelling that happens, it is inclusive, it will be powerful. And I think it is happening as we speak.
I'm wondering, what are your hopes for the future of the industry? Because we're seeing a lot of change right now. Where would you like to see that go?
There's been a lot of, God, is the movie business over? Are people going to theaters? There's a lot of deep apocalyptic conversations everybody's having about everything. But I think as we've all talked about, like the things that have broken through during COVID and even the big blockbusters, I pray, I really want things to keep going where we support and really make popular, the Phoebe Waller-Bridges and the Michaela Coles and you know, these writer creators that just become almost like big behemoth, you know, sort of superstars, because they kind of back in the day were felt like Friends. It's so indie, you know, like they're not, you know, like it's not a Dwayne Johnson action movie. And now I think that there's like this beautiful acceptance and almost like it's more special. You know, you see something that seems so unique and different, and you dive into something. And I do think that's the way that, whether or not it's on a big theater screen or, you know, on Disney Plus or something, but I do think that idea of a deep respect for creator and sort of what they're talking about, it feels very intimate and sort of is revelatory. I think I see that trend, and I hope it continues, and I hope it becomes like, you know, the tipping point of, you know, what we're doing, because I'd like those people to make the most money. Frankly, they deserve it.
Yeah, and I'd like to see more inclusion, you know, in front of the camera and behind the camera, because it just creates a richer, more interesting experience. And when you're telling a story through a female lens, why wouldn't you want a female DP? Or, you know, not to say that only a female DP can tell that story, but I just think to have a more inclusive landscape across the board is incredibly important. And hopefully through collaboration, more brilliant art will pop up.
Yeah,
And I remember back in the day when I started Toni at ICM and I was an assistant, we used to have to send out the hard pictures of pictures and resumes. And there was like the TV drawer and there was the film drawer, and you like get your TV actors here and now I love that everybody can do everything. And I just think like talent is talent. So if somebody comes from digital or YouTube or TikTok or recipe making or whatever it is, I just love that people can cross over and that that it doesn't really matter, and you don't need to live by these labels, that you can just, art is art and you're allowed to create and the rules are kind of gone. I think that's very cool and super fun.
Yeah, I agree. Better representation of everyone, more interesting storytelling, and telling stories. I'm all for, believe me, I'm all for the Marvel movie. I'm all for the action movie. But I also love a good story about good people doing good things under complicated circumstances, and any story that sort of reveals human nature. So the more stories that are out in the foreground, whether it's film, television, or on the stage, that talk really about the human experience as opposed to some aspirational experience of humanity, I'll be thrilled.
So as a closing here, what would you say for the people that are watching, the advice that you would give them to keep moving along in their career at this point?
I would just say, believe in yourself and love what you do, and do not aspire to be a television star or a movie star or a Tony winner or whatever it is. Love the craft. And it's such a simple statement. And yet I think that it's so easy in the business that we're in to get wrapped up into who won what and who got what and who's doing what, and I didn't, and I don't measure up. And you just have to quiet whatever voice is condoning that and let it go, and just know that love what you do and just keep doing it. And at the end of one's life, are you happy that you committed your life to being an actor? And if you commit to the craft and love it, I think the answer will probably be yes.
I would say, similar to how I stay sane in this business, I think you should find your kind of community, and hopefully it actually becomes a little bit of community where it doesn't feel competitive, because I know that can happen in Los Angeles a lot. I know that ekes away at the soul, but I do see, 90% happiness with people that feel like they have a support system of other actors, other filmmakers, other writers who show up at their events, or decide you want to collaborate with somebody and you have an idea for a movie and you have an amazing writing partner that you can sort of go back and forth on. I think feeling like you're not just waiting for the call or waiting for that audition, that can be soul sucking. So I would say if every actor, I feel like has some sort of writing in them or some sort of creative kind of like goal. And so I would say, find your community, find your group, and just start collaborating, and then also just show up to people's events and be supportive, just friendship. I think that's what gets me through this business. And then it's beautiful when you see people become more and more successful together. So that's what I would say.
I would just say it is a craft, and a real, LA is full of gorgeous humans everywhere that you look, but it is a craft, and to be prepared and put the work in and do everything you can to be as prepared, and just your craft is so honed, because you never know. I signed somebody on a set with no credits who literally looked at me and said, "Who are you?" And I don't know, it was just the way he said it. I was like, "Do you have an agent and I'm signing you?" You know, I know that sounds strange, but it just, the way he said it, it like hit me in the gut. And I was like, yeah, I just think he has it. And it was just an instinct thing. But he had done the, you know, later, obviously we discussed, and he had done the work, and he had gone to NYU, and he had put in the time and the energy and the, you know, to give him that confidence to probably say on the set to me, like, "Who are you?" And it just, you know, if he hadn't done the work, if he had no training and he really couldn't back up his craft, that the way he said that wouldn't have resonated to me. So I just think you've got to do the work.
That would turn me so off if somebody said that. It would be the opposite. But
maybe I didn't explain it well.
In
but
my
anyway.
opinion, they should have known who you were. But one thing I just
Well, they were in
to,
college, so you know, it wasn't like they've been reading
when
deadline.
you go
knowledge.
out for things, be sure you want the job. There are people that go, I'll read for them, I'll Zoom with them, but I don't really want it. It's so important. And by the way, it's called show business. It's a business. It's a business. You have to know your craft, but you have to, as Sarah said, you have to believe in yourself and believe in us. Believe in us that we believe in you.
The amount of times that actors, a few times, not often, but have, you know, read just their scenes and then went to an audition and completely missed the nuance of the film because they didn't actually read the entire script, is, you know, that's probably not doing the work. You know, that's right. I'm talking about an actor early on in their career. This is probably not what, you know, super successful people are doing. But you know, it's like maybe nobody ever told them, you know what, you need to read the script from start to finish so that when you're auditioning with these 2 scenes that you've been given, you understand how it connects to the rest of the script, and put that time in to read it, because it's going to affect the choices that you're making.
And I think if you love what you're doing, you will do that. If you're looking for stardom, you'll read your scene and hope that someone casts you in the hopes of how that will be a stepping stone to your next job. But if you really love it, you'll take the time to read it and to figure out what the storyline is and who your character is, and you'll do it, and you'll get rewarded for that too.
And oftentimes if it's based on a book, then the person's read the book, you know, and, you know, looked up the author, they've watched the director's commentary on his last movie, right? They're like really digging in. They're using whatever resources. There's so much information out on the internet now. They're using whatever resources are available to inform themselves about that. You know, how does that character carry themselves? What is their body posture? You know, what's their backstory, right? Before they go into their 2-scene audition, all of these things have taken place. That's doing the work.
And I saw some of the things, and you guys aren't wrong. I saw some of the chats, and they're saying that we're not always given the entire script. And
Yes.
That is true. And we understand that also, but you can ask questions. And Frank, this is about it. You can tell your agent to ask a question. You can call your agent and say, "I'm only given the sides. I need some more context." And the agent can definitely get the context for you. And if they can't, then maybe you should fire your agent.
Or just make a bold choice. I'd rather have somebody make a bold choice than just sort of like be middle of the road.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to wrap up now. I want to thank each of you, Sarah, Toni, Esther, and Tracy, for digging in and giving insights. You really did pull the curtain back on a lot of things that I don't think actors know about what you are doing. I've seen also in the chat, thank you for your passion and how much you care about this. And I love that. Let the actors feel that care, and that you believe in them, and that they can believe in themselves through that. So I want to say on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, we so appreciate you sharing your experiences, process, and craft with our performers. And good luck to you all. Thank you so much for everything you do for actors and for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation.
Thank you.